News this morning, Keir Starmer facing fresh accusations of hypocrisy. This is over the jailing of Lucy Connolly. Now, she is expected to get out today, all of a sudden, after serving 9 months in prison. So 31 months was the sentence. Now suddenly it's 9 months after all the protests and people saying, you know, she shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yeah, it's been a very high-profile case, hasn't it? Well, Connolly, who urged followers on X to set fire to asylum hotels, was sentenced to more than 2.5 years in prison. That's despite deleting the post just hours after she wrote it out and says she regretted it.
Now, critics say Starmer's stance clashes with his own guidance from 2013. Well, there's a surprise, isn't it? When, as Director of Public Prosecutions, he then suggested people who swiftly deleted offensive posts and showed remorse should not necessarily face prosecution.
Well, joining us now in the studio is political commentator John Oxley. What do you make of all of this, John, bearing in mind that Lucy Connolly is set to walk free in just a few hours' time?
Well, I think something we've seen is, over the last year, this is a case that has really become the focal point of the aftermath of the protests and the riots last year, has been very controversial for the government, and has really seen a lot of the opposition really swing behind her and highlight what has always been a quite complex issue of what the criminal responsibility is for social media. And I think it's going to be a debate that's going to continue to run and run as we see other protests developing and just a lot more engagement and popularity and a higher temperature on places like Twitter.
What do you make of what's being unearthed now, which is Sir Keir Starmer's own guidance from 2013? So this is when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, where he suggested that people who wrote messages or offensive messages, something that could be deemed as offensive, but then swiftly deleted them and showed remorse, should not necessarily face prosecution. But then the same Sir Keir Starmer, who actively was, approving of the fact that Lucy Connolly was going to jail.
I think one of the things in this case is the amount of people that saw the post, and I think that's one of the critical factors. And it'd be interesting to see in this broader guidance how much of that applied, because I think this was a post that, although it was quickly deleted, was seen hundreds of thousands of times, and ultimately the position of Prime Minister, you have to be in many ways responsive to what the CPS have done. Rather than when you're the DPP and you're controlling it. And we don't know, how guidance was changed since then. And, really, social media has evolved a lot since the early 2010s as well, when that guidance was written.
What do you make of the US response to Lucy Connolly case? We know that JD Vance has been across this case from the very beginning. Do you think we could see a situation where she is potentially invited to the White House over this? There's been free speech concerns surrounding this case for several months now.
I think they're probably unlikely to go that far, but I think it's certainly one of those things that the White House has raised a lot in relation to Europe. There is a very different culture around free speech and the First Amendment in the United States compared with most places in Europe, and certainly very different legal position. And it seems, as part of the sort of Trump-Vance ideological project, that's one of the things that they want to highlight and celebrate. But at the same time, of course, we're seeing lots of controversy around some of the pro-Palestine protests in the United States, and they themselves rescinding people's visas over things they've said. So I think it's going to be one of those things that probably does run quite a bit in the balance between US, UK, European relations. But I'm not sure whether they'll go as far as inviting her over to the United States.
OK, John Oxley, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Let's get the opinions now of former Conservative advisor James Price on this one. Well, they should not serve sentencing or prosecution or incarceration, but Lucy Connolly did.
Yeah, first of all, I'm glad you haven't got a before and after picture of me. Without the beard, I look a bit like
There's
Kim.
still time.
I can find one. I look a bit like Kim Jong-un without the beard. So, on the substance of this, I think the first thing everybody has been very careful to do is to say that what Lucy Connolly wrote was not okay, right? It was very unpleasant and all the rest of it, and that people should either feel a level of sort of social shaming from that sort of stuff. But in someone like the United States of America, it wouldn't count as anything illegal because you have to have sort of direct, you have to go to this place and then we will attack them or we will set fire to this particular hotel. You know, you have to have details in the speech for it to count as an incitement to violence. Whereas this was clearly someone who I think was letting off steam. There was a crucial thing in what she said of ending a sentence with "for all I care," and then she realised the error of her ways and she deleted it. So I think all of that stuff could have been litigated in the courtroom had she been given the opportunity. She wasn't. She was denied bail along with lots of other people, and the justice system moved remarkably quickly given how slow it moves for everybody else all the time. And so when you put all of those factors together and then you compare it to some other high-profile cases that have happened recently, for example, Ricky Jones, a Labour Party councillor who was caught going like this at a protest and talking about slitting people's throats. He was given a year's time. He was given bail. He managed to get a fancy King's Counsel silk to defend him, and he was then found not guilty. And so although these are slightly different cases, like, you can see why people have this kind of anger about the two-tier justice system going on. And lawyers may say, well, these are different cases here and there, but they miss the wood for the trees of the kind of general level of injustice that someone does something, a young mum, denied bail, a much longer prison sentence than lots of people have done for violent offences, versus some of these other cases. I think that kind of sense across the whole of the justice system is why people are so angry about this.
I wonder what will happen to Lucy next. You know, she comes out. I wonder, is there a public profile for her after this, or does she just slip back into the background?
It's a good question, isn't it? It's probably too late for her to get on to Strictly Come Dancing this year. I'm not quite sure she's there yet. But if I were her, I'd probably just want a quiet life after going through all of this. You know, how many of us have got Facebook accounts and things like that where you write something silly and, you know, no one notices it and you can kind of get away scot-free? Or maybe she does try and take this and realise that the most important thing that we have in life is our liberty, and she's had hers taken away, and maybe she wants to fight for that.
It's quite interesting, the US interest in her case. I mean, J.D. Vance has spoken about it before, hasn't he? I mean, and Charlie Kirk, I think, speaking to GB News, has spoken about the Lucy Connolly case as well. Do you think there is a potential that if she chose to go public with this, she could potentially be invited to the White House?
Gosh, that would be quite a story, wouldn't it, if it happened? America takes free speech, I think, even more seriously, probably, than we do. They have it written specifically into their Bill of Rights and the First Amendment to the Constitution. And as I said just now, there are all kinds of stricter ways that you can get away with saying a lot more. For this to be a crime in America, as I say, you'd have to have specific intentions and planning and things like that in there. Starmer has this weird line where he keeps saying, we've had free speech in this country for a very long time. You could probably add a coda to that of, well, until quite recently. I've just come back from a week and a half in America, and people keep asking, what's going on there? Are you not getting arrested all the time for saying things? And this is, although that's probably a bit much for now, that is the kind of soft power reputation that Britain has. We're seen as a country where the kind of horrible rape gangs have been happening to children, where you get arrested for saying mean things online, and that you've got no free speech, and we've been letting in huge numbers of illegal migrants. That is not the kind of soft power that we want to be portraying when we have so much to offer the world, but that's where we are right now.